If I had to choose between the 2022 Honda 250RX and the 2021 Yamaha 250FX, even on the motocross track, I would choose
Welcome back to the channel. We got Sam and Josh Knight. We're here at the motocross track, and guys, we got a bunch of bikes that we're going to be testing out today. Now, these are closed course cross-country bikes. And Josh, what are we going to do with these today?
Well, we recently just did some content riding all four of these bikes on off-road terrain. I went out, rode with Sam and Logan, and tried to give my best experience on these different machines and show which one I liked. I felt the most fun bike was the KTM in the off-road terrain, and the fastest bike was the Yamaha 250F. If I wanted to be competitive, I'd probably ride that one. But today we're totally changing the environment, and we're going to ride a motocross track. We're at the OCA motocross track just outside of Ogden, Utah, and we're going to put all four of these bikes to the test on the motocross track and see what the results are there.
So we're trying to pick out what bike our entire crew likes best. It's kind of like a king of the hill thing. So out in the desert, single track, and now at the motocross track. So far, out of all these bikes, we have a couple that are moving towards the top. We're not going to give you exactly what those are, but if you've been following along, you probably already know. But towards the end of this video, we're going to tell you which ones we like the best and why. So we're going to hit the track and go ride and have some fun. We've had a fun day riding these two four-strokes. So it's a 2021 YZ250FX and the 2022 Honda CRF250RX on the motocross track. Now, we get these are off-road bikes, but to be honest with you, they're actually pretty closely related to the motocross versions of these bikes. So we wanted to go test them out and then pick a winner. So we're trying all these bikes out. We have ridden them out in the desert, and we've gotten Josh's opinion. There's a video if you guys want to go check that out. Go check that out. So we're gonna jump right into everything. So let's Josh, let's talk about what you thought about these bikes so far.
It's interesting comparing both of these on the motocross track and the track we were riding today. Pretty simple vet track, really simple obstacles, and it is motocross, but something that we discussed in our other video talking about the 125s is that both of these bikes, and more so with these 250 four-strokes, is that they're a Japanese motorcycle and they come with a strong motocross platform. So this isn't so much an off-road bike that has a couple motocross features. These are motocross bikes with a couple off-road features. So they might change the gearing slightly, put an 18-inch rear wheel and a bigger tank, and a couple other little things, but they're fundamentally kind of a motocross bike. So I was excited to ride it on the motocross track and see how both of them performed. And honestly, a lot of similar attributes that I experienced when riding these machines in the off-road terrain, just applied a little bit differently on the motocross track. And honestly, the gap between both of them is a little bit tighter. As far as which one I really consider to be kind of my favorite. It's a little bit tighter on the motocross track.
Don't give it away yet.
So now we're going to talk about kind of each of these bikes. Let's start with the motor. So what do you feel is the difference between these two different motors? And bear in mind the Yamaha is a 6-speed versus a 5-speed. So what do you feel like was the difference between the two? Which one, what did you like and not like of each of these bikes?
The Yamaha makes fantastic power, makes really strong power. And the Honda as well makes really good power when it's right there in the meat of that power curve, right where you're making strong connection with the ground and you have great forward traction. Both bikes are really strong, and I don't know, just based on my butt dyno, what I'm feeling from the bike. I feel like if you're right at that peak drive, that forward drive, they're both comparable. They're pretty close. And honestly, I felt more power from the Honda today than I did when we were riding off-road. Might have just been the terrain difference a little bit, maybe being a little bit more sensitive to it, but I felt like the Honda was strong. It has a great motor. This is Honda's newest edition of the 250F, and so I was excited to ride it. The biggest difference for me between these two bikes is really how long that power lasts. So once you initiate that forward drive, you're accelerating really hard. At some point, you're increasing in speed and increasing in RPMs. At some point, you're going to have to kind of shift up because that power sort of signs off and falls off. And the Yamaha just stays stronger longer. It has more connection with the ground, and it produces more power in those higher RPM areas than the Honda. So really for me, that's the biggest difference when I'm out riding it on the motocross track, is I can stretch that motor out a little bit longer. I can stay on the throttle, and if I'm driving down that straightaway, I don't have to shift. I can stay on the throttle and still feel like I'm moving forward. Whereas on the Honda, I feel like it tapers off a little sooner, and I have to shift to keep that forward momentum.
Yeah, and both of these bikes are pretty much identical when it comes to horsepower. And to echo Josh, same thing, as I felt like the Yamaha just had more to give, and so it made it way more predictable and easier, especially someone I'm not very good at moto, so it covered a lot of my terrible riding ability, and it kind of made up for it. So yeah, the motor on that Yamaha is fantastic. All right, let's jump into suspension. So obviously both Japanese bikes, both been around for a long time, both have kind of have their suspension set up. And let's talk about the differences between these two on the track.
Honestly, if you've watched our 125 video, we had a little bit more to say when it came to the suspension differences between the two bikes. Kind of drastically different. They have the WP European suspension versus the KYB stuff that's on a lot of the Japanese bikes. These ones are closer. There's not as much of a difference. Personally, I was pretty satisfied with both bikes when it came to suspension. I do feel like the Honda had a little bit better hold up. I felt like it after that slap down, after the jumps or the whoops, I felt like it sprung back up to kind of its ride height a little bit quicker. The Yamaha, to me, based on how we have it set up right now, squats a little bit more. The rear end sits a little bit more low, but overall, no huge differences for me when it comes to suspension.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, I don't even know why I'm talking, but that's exactly the same thing. I definitely felt like the suspension on the Yamaha I was more confident on it. It just felt like it just did everything great. But you're totally right. In off-road, I felt like the Yamaha was a few bars above the Honda, but on the track, it felt like you said, the gap wasn't nearly as big. So that leads me to the next thing is well, let's talk about the rider ergonomics, or the chassis, and how the bike's set up.
Yamaha, when you sit on the bike, it feels very flat. The bars feel a little bit low and kind of swept down. So sometimes just in the sitting position before you're moving, the Yamaha can feel a little bit low, a little bit flat. The Honda has a little bit taller bar setup. The seat is dished a little bit more, so it feels like you're sitting in there. As well, with the larger off-road tank that comes on the RX model, it does exaggerate that cockpit feel a little bit more. So for me, the Yamaha feels a little bit different sitting on it, but as soon as you start cornering and getting that bike in that tip-in phase in the corners, it feels fantastic. It feels great. I really like cornering the Yamaha, and each time I've jumped on the Honda, it's taken a little bit of time to get used to, a little bit longer to get used to, just the rider triangle and the ergonomics. Once I've spent a few laps riding on it, it's not that bad. It just takes me a little bit longer to get used to it. Mainly because of the larger off-road tank and the way the frame is designed on the Honda. They're only able to add that fuel and that fuel space a little bit higher up. So it sits kind of tall and is a little bulky compared to the Yamaha. And that might contribute a little bit to this sort of top heavy feel that I experience on the Honda, but nothing so much that I couldn't really ride it aggressively or even race it. I felt after just a couple laps, I'd kind of get my wiggles out and sort of work through some of those feelings, and enjoyed both bikes. But from a cornering and kind of an attack position perspective, I do like the Yamaha Ergonomics just a little bit more.
Yeah, and just to highlight what Josh, it's strange because you get on each bike and you feel like with the Yamaha, it's like it's just totally different kind of riding position when you're on the bike without moving. But as soon as you start moving, I feel like the Yamaha was, for me at least, it felt way better standing up, and I could attack everything a lot like more aggressively, and I'm confident, and that to me, so as far as the ergonomics is concerned in the chassis, I give the thumbs up to the Yamaha over the Honda. The Honda isn't bad, but I mean, yeah, the gas tank on the Yamaha is actually clear underneath you. It's got, Yamaha has a unique design where their motor's basically backwards from everyone else's, and so they have a whole bunch of, the air box is up here, and then you're basically like a snowmobile. You're sitting on top of the gas tank, and it's all the way underneath you. Where the Honda is like the old school 4 strokes, where it's like all up here. And while I'm not fast enough to really notice that, I felt the Yamaha definitely cornered easier for me, but I couldn't tell you why, other than it just feels more, just feels better to me. And whereas I felt like I was a little bit more iffy and stuff in the corners on the Honda. All right, so we've kind of gone over everything as far as what the bikes are like. Now it's time for us to pick which one we like the best. So if you guys don't know, we're doing a King of the Hill. We've already done that on the 125, so go check out that video. We're going to do it with these two 250Fs as well. And sadly, as much as I'd love to keep every bike I've ever owned, we've got to sell one of them. And we're going to try to find a bike to dethrone the one that we like best in the desert and in the moto track, and also in the hard enduro or even single track type riding. So I'm going to let Josh go first because his opinion's probably way more valid than mine. I just usually end up echo whatever he says. So, all right, Josh, the $1 million question is, if it was your hard-earned money, which bike would you have in the garage?
If I had to choose between the 2022 Honda 250RX and the 2021 Yamaha 250FX, I would choose the Yamaha, even on the motocross track. And here's why. Mainly because of that over rev. It's a smaller bore motorcycle, so you're going to be working it. You're going to be riding in the higher RPMs more. And me, if I'm trying to go fast on the motorcycle track, I'm going to be in that higher RPM zone. And I liked that connection with the ground. I was able to drive forward a little bit more and not have to shift as early. Whereas on the Honda, it signed off a little bit more. The cornering ability on the Yamaha is just superior. It just tips into the corners. It's stable in the corners. It's very flat. I can move around on the motorcycle and get to all my controls very easily. And on the Honda, I feel that little sense of top heaviness when I'm tipping into the corners. And so really, those are the two biggest things that are going to sell me on the Yamaha. But again, compared to our off-road test, the gap is a little bit closer, and the gap is really, really small. These are nitpicking details. If you told me that I had to race the Honda, I'm not going to be upset. I'm going to be excited because it's an awesome motorcycle. It would be super fun, and I really enjoyed riding it. If you're going to force me to choose, I would choose the Yamaha.
All right, guys, there you heard it. Josh is a pro-level rider. He's been riding pretty much his entire life, and he chooses the Yamaha. Now, here's my 2 cents as a wannabe motocross rider. So whenever I ride the Honda first and I just do the laps on it, I just really like it. And I'm like, this is such a fun bike. It doesn't do anything super weird. It's got, you can focus on riding versus just focusing on the bike. And I know that's kind of a theme that I always talk about, is like, how, are you thinking about the bike? If you're thinking about the bike, then something's not right with the bike. Or if you're just focused on your technique and riding, then basically that's a sign of a good bike. So every time I'm like, I love this Honda, and I start doubting how much I love the Yamaha until I switch. So that's the crazy part, guys, is the Yamaha, for my riding ability, makes me feel like a hero. And it's the combination of the motor, the suspension, and the geometry of the bike. If I'm sitting down, if I'm standing up, if I'm doing anything, my confidence level is high. And to me, that's, for, like I said, for my riding ability, you know, a wannabe has-been, it really fits my riding style. I feel great on it. And to me, that's a sign of a great bike for me. And it's still, in this King of the Hill shootout, it's winning for me. Like, it's best in the desert. It's best on the moto track. You know, is it going to be better in the single track stuff? You can make that decision, and we're going to do a video on that here as soon as the mountains open up. There's behind us, we're just looking at huge snow drifts. But so we wanted to answer that question too. But man, right now, you know, the Yamaha is really hard to beat. I'm a big fan of it. We appreciate you watching. If you stuck around this far, if you aren't already following Josh, he has a YouTube channel, and he also has an online training program at ridewiththeknights.com. I've taken the course. I'm in the course. Guys, it's helping me be a safer and a better rider. And who doesn't want to be faster than their buddies, right? So go check it out. Go sign up. You're not going to regret it. And guys, we will see you out on the trail.
Right on.
Right on!
FX.
Yes.
2022.
Yes. Dude, I
Honda.
can't even remember all that.
Honda 250RX.
It's almost like you like dirt bikes.